Hi, everyone. You're very welcome today to our live Fulbright Irish Awards webinar. My name is Aoife Drynan and I'm the Communications and Events Manager at the Fulbright Commission in Ireland. And today I'm presenting an overview of the 26-27 Fulbright Irish Awards, giving particular focus to our awards in the area of the arts, creative and heritage sectors. So we're delighted today to have 3 Fulbright alumni with us to share their application tips and give details about their Fulbright experience. So we'll be hearing from Fulbright Irish scholar Elva Mulcrone, Fulbright Creative Ireland Professional Fellowship awardee Kevin McDermott, and Fulbright Creative Ireland Museum Fellowship Smithsonian scholar and Campus Ambassador David Stone. It will be well worth hanging on to the end of this webinar to hear their tips and Fulbright experience, so do stay on for that. And please submit any questions that you have in the Q&A box below, and our team will answer these at any point during the webinar. So just some quick housekeeping. This webinar will be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel later today. If you have any questions after this webinar, you can email awards@fulbright.ie. So moving on, we are the Ireland United States Commission for Educational Exchange. We are set up as part of a bilateral agreement between Ireland and the United States. The major program that we run is the Fulbright program. We also fund Irish language programs in the United States and provide the Education USA portal in Ireland. Last year was 100 years of diplomatic relations between Ireland and the US. So at the Commission, we run a program called Education USA that is supported by the US Department of State. Education USA is a portal that shares information for those who are interested in studying at undergrad and postgrad level in the United States. So if you know of anyone who's looking to study in the US, you can direct them to our website. So the Fulbright program was named after Senator J. William Fulbright. It was set up in 1946 as a reaction to the Second World War atrocities. Senator Fulbright believed that education and cultural exchange was the best way to lead to mutual understanding and to peace globally. So Ireland joined the program in 1957 and became a bilateral partnership as the Fulbright Irish Commission in 91. We are set up with the purpose of education and cultural exchange between the US and Ireland in both directions. So now, in 2025, there are 165 countries in this successful global and enduring programme. The Fulbright Commission in Ireland is supported by the Irish Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, the Department of Rural Community Development and the Gaeltacht, and the US Department of State, and by key sponsors that I will mention later on in the presentation. So moving on to discuss the Fulbright opportunities available to you today. We are always looking for passionate and accomplished people who are engaged and want to develop their career, knowledge, and expertise and make a contribution. The programme is open to students, scholars, and professionals, depending on the award. So to clarify, students are those who have completed their undergraduate degree and are considering postgraduate research at master's level. Students are also those who have started but haven't yet received a PhD. A scholar is an academic who has a PhD or a professional, an artist or a teacher. A professional has a minimum of 5+ years relevant experience in the area of the award they are applying for. And specifically for the Creative Ireland Professional Fellowship Award, you're required to have minimum of 7+ years professional experience. So I do want to emphasize that we are looking for and very much open to applicants from all disciplines. On a Fulbright, you have the opportunity to engage in research, study, or you can teach or lecture in the USA. For scholars and professionals, you can research and lecture combined. The programme is also operates in the opposite direction from the USA to Ireland. So what does a Fulbright Award provide? Well, there's a monetary grant to help you fund your research or project in the US, visa administration for going to the US, and the Commission will support you through this visa process, accident and emergency insurance, a significant amount of cultural and professional programming, pre-departure and in the US, including networking and meeting with peers and colleagues. Cultural engagement in the US and the memories you'll make will ensure that you get the most value of your experience. You'll receive ongoing connection to the Commission and links to a global network of Fulbright alumni that you'll maintain throughout your lifetime. So Fulbright really stands out from other programs because it's really an experience of a lifetime that lasts a lifetime. We have many alumni who remain deeply engaged in the program long after their Fulbright award. And you'll hear a lot of Fulbrighters talk about the Fulbright family and that the Fulbright experience is not only related to the work that you do in the US, but much more than that. It's about the engagement with your peers and your colleagues in the US and then back in Ireland. And your experience impacts your family, your academic community, and the wider society more broadly. It goes without saying that this is also a prestigious program, and the Fulbright name carries a lot of weight. So a lot of worldwide recognition comes with the program, and it will open a lot of doors for you in your career. So a Fulbright Award is unique as it's about a full and rounded cultural experience as much as an educational program. There is an expectation that you'll experience the United States and all the US has to offer. We always recommend you say yes to almost everything when you're on your award. It's not only about being based in the museum or lab or library or lecture hall, but being outside and experienced with people in society and the memories you make. This is what has made the program such an enduring success. And I think the images on this slide really show that. So on to the application process. You can see our timeline overview on the screen. And as you can see, applications are currently open and will close on the 23rd of October 2025 at 4 p.m. Irish time sharp. You can go to any award page on our website, and on it you can click the link that says Start My Application. Then you'll be sent a link to the application and the guidelines. Do review all the criteria on the website, as there is specific criteria for each award. Once you've submitted your application and the deadline is closed, applications will go under technical review by peer reviewers and experts in your field from the US and Ireland from about November to December. And should you be successful, you'll be shortlisted for an interview towards the end of January, early February. This is your opportunity to talk about yourself and how you embody the Fulbright ethos. At this point, you'll most likely not be speaking with experts in your field, so this is your opportunity to speak about your work with people who may not be familiar with your field and in a way that your work can be understood. Following a successful interview, offers are typically made in March following board approval. The Fulbright review and selection process is laid out clearly on our website if you're looking for more information. So the best actions to take for you now are to review the information on the website, choose an award, and please note you can only apply for one award per cycle, find a host institution, plan your project and research proposal, and very importantly, research what it means to be a Fulbrighter. What are the Fulbright values and how do you embody these values, both personally and professionally? Cultural and educational engagement is a huge reason behind why the program stands out above others. And at any point in the process, you're welcome to get in touch with us at awards@fulbright.ie. So on screen are the categories available for Irish applicants to go to the US on a Fulbright award. If you are a postgraduate student involved in research, or if you seek to complete a postgraduate degree program, you can apply for a Fulbright Irish Student Award. If you are looking to study a 2-year master's, you'll be required to find additional funding for the second year of your master's. If you are an academic who already has your PhD, or if you have a minimum of 5+ years or more relevant professional experience, you would apply for an Irish Scholar Award. The Commission also has shorter duration Tech Impact sponsored awards with an ICT focus. And there are Irish Language FLTA awards to teach Irish and take courses at colleges in the United States. The Fulbright Schumann Awards are administered by the Fulbright Belgian Commission, and you would apply through a separate application that opens mid-September. These awards are to conduct research that specifically relates to EU-US relations and policy, and they're typically for 9 months. So first off, you'll need to check out if you're eligible to apply for a Fulbright Award. The Irish Awards are open to Irish citizens. They're also open to EU or UK citizens who have a minimum of 5 years residency in the Republic of Ireland. If for any reason you're unable to apply through the Irish Commission, don't worry, you may be able to apply through one of the many commissions based around the world. So unique to Fulbright is that you must be able to demonstrate a strong rationale for why you're going to the US and where you're going. What is the exchange element of what you will bring to the US, and what will you bring home from the institution you will attend? You will need to explain clearly why specifically Fulbright should support you as you carry out your work. Please know there is a 2-year home rule visa requirement, meaning you will need to return physically to Ireland after 2 years after completing your award before you can apply for another visa in the US. This doesn't preclude you from traveling to the US on an ESTA, but the 2-year home rule is very strict. And if you have any issues with this two-year home rule, then perhaps the Fulbright is not for you. You can find out more information about this in our FAQs on our website or the US State Department's website. So furthermore, you cannot be a dual US-Irish citizen. You cannot be living in the US at the time of your application. And you cannot have recent extensive experience of studying or living in the US, as this would go against the Fulbright's ethos of educational and cultural exchange. Please do get in touch with us at the Commission if you think there's any reason you might be deemed ineligible. So that's awards@fulbright.ie. So on the screen are the awards in your sectors that could be of interest to you and really why you're here today. So we have the Fulbright Heritage Council Professional Scholar Award, the Fulbright Museum Fellowship Exploratorium, Harry Ransom and Smithsonian Award, and the Fulbright Creative Ireland Professional Fellowship Award, and of course, our All Discipline Awards. So starting off with the Fulbright Irish All Discipline Awards, they're exactly that. They're open to applicants from all areas of study, research, and discipline, and anywhere in the US. From artists, creatives, musicians, performers, historians, archaeologists, archivists, etc., everyone can fall into this category. There is a home for your research, study, or teaching under the All Discipline Awards. The All Discipline Awards for scholars and professionals are for applicants who have a PhD or 5+ years minimum relevant professional experience. You must establish affiliation with the US institution you wish to attend. Therefore, 3 to 10 max months duration, and the maximum you receive with this award is 48,000. The All Discipline Awards for postgraduate students are for visiting researchers as part of a PhD research or degree-seeking students, meaning you can enroll in a master's or a PhD program. You must also establish affiliation or apply for a degree course with your intended host US institution. It's up to you to establish that connection. And therefore a minimum of 4 to 10 months, a minimum of 4 and a maximum of 10 months. And further information about the All Disciplines Award can be found on our website. You can see some of our targeted sponsors award here on screen, and I'll go into more detail on the sponsored awards now that may match your area of expertise. Please be aware that there is a separate form for the sponsored awards in our application. So starting off with the Fulbright Creative Ireland Professional Fellowship Award. This is for 3 to 6 months, and it's for professionals with at least 7 years experience working in the creative, cultural, or heritage sectors. You also must have a PhD or terminal professional degree or 7+ years relevant professional experience. You must also have a clear plan of research and or lecturing. So do check out the criteria on our website for this award. Some specific eligibility include the recipient of the fellowship will need to demonstrate the benefits of their area of research to one or more of the pillars of the Creative Ireland programme. And they are creative youth, creative communities, creative industries, creative health and well-being, creative climate action, and sustainability. So as you can see on screen, we've had a vast variety of Fulbright Creative Ireland awardees over the years. We also have Kevin and David, who will be speaking to you shortly about their experience at the end of this webinar. So you can see a variety of backgrounds on screen, from creative writing to playwrights, archives, art history, archaeology, public engagement, museum studies, and some further Creative Ireland awardees on screen. and you'll have heard of Alice Marr and Brian Maguire for sure. Again, on screen, we can see some Fulbright awardees to give you an idea of the wide-ranging disciplines that span all the arts, creative, heritage, museum, cultural sectors. And we will have Fulbright Creative Ireland Professional Fellowship awardee Kevin McDermott speaking with us shortly also. So moving on to the Fulbright Heritage Council Professional Scholar Award, which was launched last year. This award is open to professionals with at least 5 years post-qualification experience or a PhD or professional doctorate in the cultural heritage sector. You must have the capacity to spend a minimum of 4 months and a maximum of 5 months in the US. This is a unique opportunity to travel to the US and research in areas of museum practice, archival practice, digital preservation, traditional skills preservation, material conservation, folklife, and oral history. Academic and professionals with 5 or more years relevant experience are invited to apply for the Fulbright Museum Scholar Award at the Exploratorium. Postgraduate students are also invited to apply for the Fulbright Museum Fellowship to complete short-term research at the Exploratorium in San Francisco. The mission of this internationally renowned museum is to create a culture of learning through innovative environments, programs, and tools that help people nurture their curiosity about the world. Another fantastic award we have available is the Harry Ransom Centre Museum Fellowship, the Fulbright Harry Ransom Centre Museum Fellowship Award. Proposed research projects should engage substantively with the Ransom Centre's collections and must demonstrate a commitment to innovation and creativity and include plans for both scholarly and community engagement. And on to the Fulbright Museum Fellowship, the Smithsonian. This is open to both students and scholars. So an Irish postgraduate student can be awarded a Fulbright Museum Fellowship to complete short-term research at the Smithsonian Institution. An Irish academic can also be awarded a Fulbright Museum Scholar to complete 6 months of research at the Smithsonian in Washington, DC. Please note, we do advise candidates to apply for a Fulbright sponsored award first before you apply for an all-discipline award to give you every chance of success. We do tend to get our all-discipline awards can be quite oversubscribed. So we definitely advise you to apply for sponsored awards to get the benefits of these awards. So on to application requirements. As you know, the awards are currently open and close on it with a deadline of the 23rd of October at 4 p.m. All applications are made through the online application system. You'll submit your personal information and upload your CV. You'll submit a Fulbright statement and personal statement, which is a unique document to the Fulbright program. You'll submit your project statement. You're also required to have 3 recommenders from your professional network, and we encourage you to register your 3 referees as soon as possible, as they'll have the same deadline as you do for submission of your application. You'll need a copy of your passport, samples of work if you're an artist, and a letter of affiliation for researchers or scholars, which is a letter from the institution in the US stating that they wish to collaborate with you. If you're planning to apply for the all-discipline awards, it's up to you to decide where you want to go. We encourage applicants to keep an open mind about the host institutions in the US that they are applying to. The Commission is always keen to set up new links with new institutions, so do consider host institutions across all parts of the United States. And do mention the Fulbright name when you're making inquiries. It carries a lot of weight in the States and you're very much pushing an open door. Fulbright is not just an exchange between the big name universities and institutions. It's an opportunity to seek out anywhere groundbreaking work is taking place among experts in your field, even in locations that might be off the beaten track. This is a space where cultural exchange is really needed. You could look to where experts in your specific area are based in the US. You can talk to your colleagues and lecturers about getting into the detail of where your research makes sense to fit. And I would also recommend you see the hints on this slide as they're particularly useful. It should make sense to you first. So I need to go here because this reason. And one way to go about identifying your host that we recommend is definitely by talking to Fulbright alumni, both on the Irish and US side. So you'll need to complete a project proposal and Fulbright statement in your application. Think about the short-term and long-term objectives that you want to achieve on your project and outline your project impacts. The Fulbright statement is a unique piece of the application process. This is not the place to rehash your project statement or your CV, but this is to hear about you as a person who can embody the Fulbright ethos through your award and your understanding of the Fulbright program. Here you talk about both your personal and professional motivations and ambitions, about your interests and your hobbies, what you hope to achieve, and again, not just in your research objectives, but also in your objectives as a cultural ambassador, as someone traveling somewhere in the spirit of Senator Fulbright to learn about another culture and to share your own culture. Discuss the benefit of what that means to you and the wider community. What is the benefit for you and for Fulbright of you receiving your Fulbright award? So don't rehash your study objective essay or your CV for your statement. Once you've submitted your application, it goes to the review stage and, if successful, on to the interview stage. As you can see on screen, at the review stage, all aspects of your application will be reviewed with a large part weighted on your academic record and project statement. Whereas at the interview stage, this is reversed. Here we want to hear about your cultural engagement and your leadership skills. It's very much about who you are as a person and less about your academic or professional record at the interview stage. And to our Fulbright ethos and our values. Fulbright is dedicated to fostering merit-based excellence while honouring the unique contributions of every individual. The strength of our programme, the strength of Fulbright really is in our people, so please do share who you are. There are lots of resources available to help you with your Fulbright application. We have Fulbright ambassadors located at almost every major higher education institution in the country. They are a hugely valuable resource. Their details are on our website, and we do recommend that you reach out to them as well as other alumni. We also have alumni videos and testimonials. We have many online webinars that you can see on our YouTube, and we do recommend you follow Fulbright affiliate groups that are on our website also. So I'll leave you with these important stats. 90% of successful awardees have attended a Fulbright roadshow or webinar. So as you're here today, you're already ahead of the curve just by being here. 50% of those who started but did not complete an application did not engage with any supports like this webinar. So do make use of these resources and do contact Fulbright alumni. There are no downsides in applying for an award. Please do not self-reject. The application process is a worthwhile personal and professional exercise that will stand to you in your career. It's really only time well spent. We also love to encourage repeat applicants. I know some awardees have got their Fulbright award on the third or fourth application. So please don't self-reject, do apply. If you don't make it through an award cycle, we encourage you to apply again. And you are very much pushing an open door in the US. The Fulbright name carries weight and will open doors for you in your career. And lastly, you are joining a Fulbright family, an alumni network, a global community, and making lifelong friends. So on screen, you'll see some next steps. Next, you would select a host institution, reach out to recommenders, research the Fulbright ethos, definitely talk to a Fulbrighter. This is very important, as we mentioned. Follow us across social media, and if you do have any further queries, email awards@fulbright.ie. There also may be a potential Creative Ireland webinar coming up later in September. So we do recommend you keep an eye out on our website at fulbright.ie/events if you want some more specific information about the specific Creative Ireland Award. So next up, I'm delighted to welcome our 2024-25 Fulbright Irish Scholar, Elva Mulcrone.
Hello.
Hi, Elva.
Hi, Aoife. Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely. Take it away.
Super. Okay. It's lovely to be here today. Thank you very much, Aoife. Sarah and Dara, for inviting me to speak. It's a delight to be speaking. Essentially, I suppose Fulbright for me was a long story. So, in terms of, first of all, speaking about my experience, I looked at a Fulbright when I was a student. I went back as a mature student to study visual art in NCAD. Before that, I had a previous life where I'd read economics many years ago and then law and worked as a solicitor. So I was totally career changing. And Fulbright was always something I was aware of from my earlier, I suppose, academic disciplines. And it was something that I just thought was really worthwhile on every level. So essentially I looked at it when I was a student in NCAD and I just found I would not have met the criteria. I suppose I didn't have the confidence, and I also wasn't sure exactly how to go about it. So I just wasn't quite there, but it was in the back of my mind. So I would say, even if at this stage, and sorry, hello, all of you, and well done for being here, because it can seem quite daunting, I think, at the outset. But if at first you're looking at it and it seems like there's an awful lot of criteria to meet, that's fine. I think sit with it and then next year look at it again, and try and cover more bases before you start the process, because otherwise I think it can be quite intimidating. Not because Fulbright make it intimidating, but because there's just a lot to do. In fact, I think the process is very clearly explained in all the literature, but literally it's a case of going through it step by step and really understanding what is required. And so essentially my experience was, I looked at Fulbright initially, then I did apply when I was going for it as an all disciplines scholar. And the first time I was rejected and I did well, but I didn't get it. So again, I thought, because everybody had made it so clear not to be put off and my recommenders were very supportive, I went for it again and I got it the second time. So I am totally a fan of the school of thought of, if you really want something and if you really have a passion for your project, and really know that it's something you need to do and want to do and hope it will impact other people, I think absolutely go for it again. And I would have gone a third time if I hadn't got it the second time. So I really can't say enough how just keep trying. Everyone is very supportive in the commission in Dublin. I mean, I really couldn't say how great they were to deal with. I had some questions along the way. Again, they're there. I did email, I'm sure, quite a few times to ask questions. So I would say go for it. So just on to my Fulbright experience in the States. I had a tremendous time. So I went over in August last year, 2024, and essentially it was a very interesting time to be there. The weather was amazing. I settled in initially at a glitch with accommodation, and that's something you can think about when you come to the stage. Perhaps if you get an award, it's one of the questions you might ask someone. But essentially, settling into the university was a joy. I went in, everybody in the States is very familiar with Fulbright and very excited by Fulbright and likes having a Fulbright scholar on their campus. So essentially I went in, and as a visual artist, my brief, essentially I went as a research scholar, but I was also involved in working groups and giving some talks and being a part of workshops, etc. So essentially I went in, I had two exhibitions while I was there. So I had work to do while I was there. And I think lots of you will be in the same situation. And I basically researched. So I met so many people. I was part of so many research groups and went to so many lectures. And really, it is a full-on experience. It's a great experience. I've never met so many academics in my life. And my work has always been, because of my background, it's always been about subject matter, that I'm making abstract art about something very concrete. My project was very specific to me, as I think most of you will have a project that's dear to your heart and your academic purpose in your lifetime and for this stage of your career. So I would say you'll have every help to achieve that while you're there, because they really want you to achieve as much as you can. So I was thrown into everything. While I was there, I also ran with the ball, if you like, on the cultural exchange. And there's other opportunities, I suspect, in every city. I was in New York, so there's an awful lot going on. I mean, literally, you could be doing something from 6 a.m. until 9 p.m. But there's other networks that, as part of an academic system, you're going to be connected to. So, for example, I joined other people's lists and went to an awful lot of events and lectures in other universities, NYU particularly. And I connected with the Irish consulate, who were fantastic, and also ran lots of events and breakfast briefings, etc., which was really helpful to further my research because whilst a lot of it was in the university, there was other auxiliary bits that I did myself through people I met over there and who were incredibly generous with their time. And I found when I met somebody in one context, if I asked could I meet them for a cup of coffee, everybody said yes. So, I mean, it really is a situation where the door is open. Everybody knows what Fulbright is in the US. You may have some experience in Ireland where people aren't as familiar with it, but in the US they really are, even beyond academic communities, I would say. So, it's really an opening door to be pushed, you know, but you won't have to push very hard. So, while I was there, I also went around, as you can see in some of the slides that Aoife is showing. I set up a studio in New York. Again, Fulbright helped me to do that because I was in a studio that was publicly funded and by donors, etc. And they're hard to get in New York. I would not have got the studio if I hadn't basically gone to the governing body and said, I'm a Fulbright scholar here for a short period of time. So I got a studio in the Elizabeth Foundation, which is very near the Graduate Centre, CUNY, which is on Fifth Avenue, which is where I was primarily based for research purposes. So I had a studio about a 20-minute walk. So it was just ideal. I was able to make work, research, and go to loads of things. I mean, obviously, from an artistic perspective, New York is awash with things to see and events, but also other events. As I say, NYU run a load of events. You know, I met presidents, blah, 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 ex-presidents, I should say, went to breakfast briefings. It was just a hotbed of ideas and conversations with people who've done different types of things that all directly impacted upon my own research. So I think whatever your discipline is, you'll find people to expand your concept as to where you're going and how you should go about it. I gave a couple of talks when I was over there, as well as being part of workshop groups. I gave a couple of talks and I also collaborated with a person in the Graduate Centre to make a video piece while I was there, which is something I was really delighted to be able to do. I was only there for 3.5 months, so I was really pleased I got off the ground. Again, I would say when you're there, the moment you arrive, you know, run with the ball and ask the university or your host sponsor, or I had two across two departments. So whoever your host sponsor is, you know, ask them, can I give a talk? Can I hold workshops? Can I do whatever? Basically, whatever you have in your project, try and stick with it because that's the way I think you'll get most out of it. So, also, I went to loads of lovely events and I got invited to lovely things. There is, as part of Fulbright, you're part of a program which I would highly recommend, whatever city you're in, you connect with. And there will be invites to things or tickets that people haven't used. And because I traveled on my own, it was a great opportunity to use all those tickets because I could literally go to something at the last minute. So I went to wonderful theatre. I went to a football game. Dara had said to me, you know, get out of the art thing as well, do other things. And I did things that I really would never have thought I was interested in doing, but it was really fascinating from a cultural perspective. Everywhere you go, you tell someone you're a Fulbright scholar and they'll just chat to you. And it was just incredibly rewarding. So I suppose that's my experience. I better move on to some application tips. And really what I would say is what Aoife said. I think first and foremost, really read what the brief is, read what the criteria are and find if you have a project you're passionate about and it's always been in the back of your mind, you know, you need to explain that very clearly. Obviously, get lots of people to read your proposal at every stage, not lots of people, maybe one or two very trusted people. For me, I found it was essential to speak to previous Fulbrighters and I was very fortunate. Everybody I spoke to on campus, my host campus or my home campus was DCU. There was a couple of Fulbright ambassadors there. I met them for coffee, really helpful. And also previous Fulbrighters, I emailed and I spoke to one. I met another person for coffee. People couldn't have been more helpful and clear. And I would urge anyone thinking of this to do the same thing, to contact myself or anybody else on the list that Aoife can give you. So I think the more proactive you are, the better it will help you. So I met people that really helped me understand perhaps the gaps that had been in my first application and to fill them. So essentially, I would say, you know, be really clear. Know your project, make sure it does accord with the Fulbright principles. In my case, it was exactly it was a fit, I felt. And I think once you explain that clearly, I think you have a very good chance. I think it's a competitive process, but I think it's as competitive because there's lots of people with a serious project to administer, they want to get through. So I wouldn't be intimidated by that at all, because anybody thinking of applying for this has already been through many academic situations. And I think even as a student, but the criteria for students are obviously different. So I think really think through your application, be utterly clear, break it down, and speak to as many people as you can. In terms of, I think another thing that is helpful to understand is how the host is selected. Now, I would say for me, the host was incredibly important. And I found my host almost by accident when I'd looked at Fulbright years before. As a student, I found it overwhelming, and I had tried to email institutions and got no reply. I had emailed quite a few and got no responses. So essentially what I found was great in my ultimate application was that by happy coincidence, I had been having a coffee with an ex-colleague of mine in law who's very involved in equality matters, and they'd been on an Oireachtas committee, and I was chatting about how I needed a new form of inspiration because I felt I'd exhausted one avenue of inspiration that had been so amazing for me. And they suggested that I be introduced to this amazing academic in UCD. She turned out to recommend that I read not only her books, which were amazing. Maeve Lynch is her name. She's a very influential lady in UCD. But she directed me to another academic, and she said, I think your work would benefit from this. This lady happened to end up being my host sponsor purely because I was introduced by someone she trusted and respected. I researched her work. I loved her work. She liked my work, and she offered to be my host sponsor. And then she brought on another academic in her institution who was my co-host, who was amazing to me. So and a picture of him is there, Peter Eckersall, who was in an area I would never have thought of, dramaturgy and performance, which was not something I had much experience of. So I would really highly recommend that that essentially you follow your own path, an organic path to finding the right host for you, who's a host essentially in your area in something that you really want to learn more about. And that's how it worked for me. So other than that, I think just how Fulbright affected and impacted my career. I mean, Fulbright is a hugely important program. I think it's recognized particularly in the States, but also here hugely in academia. I put it on my emails, and it opened doors to me from the second I was awarded the scholarship. And I'm still writing emails with underneath it saying, Fulbright 2024-25 visual art. Even when I've left my institution, which I used to have on my email, I'm still referring to it. My aim and goal when I went into it was to essentially research, learn, come back and make. And that's what I've done. And I gave talks over there. Now I'm back. I'll be exhibiting in Ireland, work for myself. And I'm having a solo show, which I think would have been very hard to get over the line in Dublin, which is quite a small society, in terms of artistic scene, without having Fulbright. It was hugely helpful because it's real. It's meat, and I think everybody recognizes that. So it's been hugely influential in my career to date, and I think going forward, because it is a marker of excellence and of sincerity. And I think in any academic field or professional field, it is something that is highly respected, but also something that I think gives you as a person the chance to push yourself and then push yourself a little bit more, which I think is really great. So I can't say enough good things. That's it. Is that okay?
Thank you so much, Elva. That's fantastic. So Kevin, if you'd like to turn on your camera and unmute yourself,
Hi,
we'd
folks.
love
How
to
are
hear
you?
from you.
Yeah. I'm listening to Elva and going, well, I had a different kind of experience, probably not as busy as Elva's. I was based in Berkeley in California, and my host institution was the National Writing Project. And the National Writing Project, which began in the 1970s, originally had been part of the School of Education in Berkeley. And in latter years, it kind of moved out of the School of Education. And I had been aware of it and had adapted some of its ideas to work I was doing in Ireland. So I had a long knowledge, kind of an involvement with it at a distance and a knowledge of it. And it was the only institution I wrote to and approached. And I sent them an article I had written to show them the kind of work I was interested in. And my own work at the time when I went over and was really about engaging novice writers from disadvantaged communities. And the National Writing Project, well, its primary focus wasn't on disadvantaged communities. It was really concerned with the relationship between writing and educational success. And the Tanya Baker was the CEO of it, was very open to me coming, kind of excited, I think, to have someone coming from Ireland and open to the project. And I really wanted a bit of time as well to think out the philosophy of what we were doing. There's a lot of practice goes on in the arts, a lot of facilitation of workshops and so on. But the theory behind that is probably a little bit underdeveloped. And I wanted to try to talk to other practitioners who are working in similar contexts and compare notes and see could I develop a more rigorous philosophical foundation for what I was doing. Anyway, the National Writing Project were very welcoming, and off I went and I arrived. And the first day I arrived, Tanya phoned me to say, look, I know we're due to meet tomorrow, but I have a big seminar coming up in Chicago. So can we postpone it for a week? I said, fine, give me a chance to get my feet under the table, get my bearings. On the day we were to meet, she phoned to say her dad had just died. And, could I postpone the meeting? So, listen, I was almost embarrassed that she felt the need to phone me. And so it was a slow start. And in a way that was really interesting because it meant then that I didn't want to be sitting around twiddling my thumb. So it made me kind of get out in Berkeley and go out and knock on a little bit of cold calling to people I was interested in meeting and introducing myself. And what Elva has said, the Fulbright name is really good. It does open doors. Well, that's me standing above the campus and pointing to Berkeley and San Francisco. And then I got to meet a lot of really interesting people who are working. I was working in creative writing, but I met people who were working in dramaturgy. I had a really interesting encounter with one that brought together a huge amount of interest. One of the first things I did when I landed was to go to Oakland, neighboring city to Berkeley, where the Black Panther movement began. And they have a celebrated Museum of California there. And I was really interested to see that, and also to see their permanent collection of the work of the photographer Dorothea Lange. And I have particular interest in Lange's work. And she had a specific Oakland-based project in the 50s, and it followed the work of a public defender. And so it was photographs taken all around the courthouse in Oakland, which is a very impressive building. And all of the people in the photographs were African American, except for the public defender. But I met the current public defender, and he was involved in a drama project for recently incarcerated persons. And we became friendly, and we met quite a bit, and we shared work. And I saw some of the work on stage that they had put together in workshops. So we talked about the ethics of workshops. We talked about the idea of voice. And we were both skeptical of the idea that you help someone to find a voice. People have a voice. We kind of felt that it's the way you listen to it, and it's the ethics of that interaction which were important. So you met people other than the people I originally thought I was going to meet, and slightly outside of the university context. Now, what Elvis says is also true. I mean, Berkeley is a hive of cultural activity, and there were no end of workshops and readings and interesting take on the world, and you could be very busy. But I also wanted to carve out a little bit of time for myself to do some writing, to do some thinking. Judith Butler is, the big name philosopher in Berkeley, and I wanted to engage with her work and see how it fed into my own research. And so that's me outside the main library in Berkeley. And I spent quite a few days in there reading Judith Butler and developing my ideas. On the campus in Berkeley, there was an interesting institute, which was called the Belonging Institute. And that was really doing what they call bridging work, where seeing how you could make connections across all kinds of divides, whether it was political, religious divides. and what were the things that connected people? What was the kind of elements of humanity that transcended differences? And I went to a couple of their workshops, because obviously if you're working with disadvantaged communities, the idea of bridging differences is important. And at one of those workshops, I met Arlie Hochschild Russell, or Russell Hochschild, who is probably the foremost sociologist in the US today. And she wrote the book, A Stranger in Their Own Land, which attempted to explain, if you like, the Tea Party movement and the MAGA movement to an incomprehensible left-wing and democratic base, if you like. And one of the highlights of my trip was having a coffee with Arlie Hochschild, where we talked about our respective works. And my daughter is a sociologist, and she was green with envy that I had a chance to have a coffee with Arlie Hochschild. So there's the Belfry in Berkeley. And Berkeley is a city built around the university. So you're steeped in, workshops, you're steeped in ideas. You can't come back with a sense of, excitement about your own work. And certainly when I came back, I had a couple of new lines of inquiry. That's me talking to one of my heroes, a man called Malcolm Magorian, who wrote a book called The Ohlone Way, which was really an attempt to recreate the life of the Indian tribe that lived in California before the arrival of the Spaniards and before the arrival of the great opening of the West. And he's well in his 80s. And I'd written to him before I went to say I'd love to meet him, but he was gone into care. But there was a big festival, Ohlone Way Festival, and I went along to it. And lo and behold, Malcolm had got day release from the care to come along, and I ended up having a great chat with him. And he's just a beautiful man, a fantastic book. And again, I was interested in another disadvantaged community and how they try to express their identity through cultural work. And I met a couple of elders of the Ohlone tribe. And that was really exciting and way beyond what, you're going to happen in Ireland. So yeah, fantastic experience. Selecting the host institution was dead simple. I only wrote to one institution. My work aligned with theirs and they were very welcoming. So that's important, to try to find an institution that really aligns with your own work. And the Fulbright name opens doors. Has it impacted my career? It's certainly given me a couple of new avenues of inquiry. And it's also led to some interesting workshop work back in Dublin. The Maxine Greene Institute is a New York-based institute, and two Fulbrighters from last year, one Jane O'Hanlon and one from this year, Carmel Hinchin, were tied into the Maxine Greene Institute. And they came to Ireland for a day of sharing Maxine Greene's philosophy, aesthetic philosophy. And I did a workshop at that, a joint workshop with one of the Maxine Greene Institute staff. And that led to interesting invitations to do some workshops in the Museum of Literature Ireland. And so the work that happened in Berkeley, my thinking that happened in Berkeley, filtered through Maxine Greene, has led to some interesting work now in Dublin. Yeah, and I'm not spring chicken. I'm at a stage in my career that my career is tapering off. So it's really exciting to get new ideas, to be invested, to be able to get excited about new projects. And also as a creative writer, spending time in Berkeley in the environment I was in certainly sparked a whole raft of creative projects, a suite of poems, I think most of which have been published now, some short stories, all of which have been published. So there's a certain kind of Californian tinge to the work. I was also lucky that when I was there, my daughter, who was on a fellowship from the Harkness Foundation in New York, had been working in UC Berkeley and was due to be back in New York. But in Berkeley invited her to stay, UC Berkeley invited her to stay for an extra semester, which coincided in part with me being there. So that was really good fun. We were hanging around a little bit as two fellows in Berkeley, and that's us in visiting Muir Woods. Jim Muir was one of the founders of the national park in the States, and that's one of the redwood forests that he helped to save, and that's us there. So
that's great. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Yeah, so I recommend it thoroughly, as Elva does. go for it. Oh yeah, the one thing about the application, start as early as you can and go back to it repeatedly. It can't be done in one sitting. It needs to kind of pick back and forth and be revised and revised. I took the maximum amount of time to fill in with various parts of it. And I think that's what you do. You do it slowly and carefully and not in a rush.
Good advice.
Okay.
Brilliant. So David, if you'd like to join us.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Okay, I'll just fire away, yeah?
Perfect.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name's David, and I'm an archaeologist with the Discovery Programme Centre for Archaeology and Innovation Ireland. And I'm also proud to be one of the Fulbright Ireland campus ambassadors, where I do my best to promote the Fulbright programme to people working in archaeology and the museum sectors in Ireland. And I was invited here to chat with you today because I was fortunate enough to be the inaugural Fulbright Creative Ireland Museum Fellow at the Smithsonian back in 2018 and in Washington rather. And Aoife kindly invited me along here to chat about the experience and to hopefully give you some useful pointers about the application. Maybe Anna Galva, I first heard about the Fulbright program. I wasn't really aware of it. I became aware of it during my PhD. I was a second year conducting research on archaeobotany and ancient agriculture in Azerbaijan in the South Caucasus, where I had traveled to take soil samples and collect material for my PhD. But I also had an adjacent interest in the curation of archaeobotanical materials and how best to create digital resources to promote these artifacts. And because of that, my supervisor was aware of that, Meryl McClatchy at UCD, and she highlighted the Fulbright call at the Smithsonian. And I think she said something about the lines as they have a really good digital archaeobotanical collection, so we should look into it. I was also fortunate enough that in our department, there was a current Fulbright ambassador, Amanda Kelly, who was very encouraging and pushed me to apply. I was supposed to highlight the role of the campus ambassadors. So I applied, and I was fortunate enough to be awarded the fellowship. And in early 2019, off I went to America. Um, the experience traveling, working, and living there was a very interesting time in my life. The start of it, I arrived in Washington in a storm, but I think physically and I don't know, metaphorically, I guess the city was covered in about 2 feet of snow, and the federal government was in the midst of a shutdown. And I had no contact with the Smithsonian or my host institution for 2 to 3 weeks when I got there, but it allowed me to experience the city and learn, you know, learn how to operate in a new part of the world. But once it all opened up, I was welcomed very well. And conducting research at the Smithsonian was an amazing experience, and it still is a highlight of my life. Um, One of the largest educational and research institutes in the world, and a leader in the protection and preservation of cultural heritage and material culture. So really a really good fit for the things I was interested in um, and what I wanted to learn about. So, like selecting a host institution, part of it was easy because it's a Smithsonian specific fellowship, but the scale of the Smithsonian is enormous. So there's 17 different museums in Washington, D.C. Um, you know, housing hundreds of millions of artifacts, cubic kilometer of display and storage. So it's an enormous institute. But I managed to narrow it down to the Natural Museum of Natural History for a couple of reasons. I guess it's the home of their anthropology department, which is an adjacent or sister discipline to archaeology. And while looking at that, I discovered the gentleman who would turn out to be my host, Dr. Logan Kistner, who's also an anthropologist and archaeologist, and had been involved in some, and is still involved in some very interesting research in South America on plants. So kind of could see we would have a lot of common ground. But also that museum curated the collections from the 18th and 19th century that I was interested in looking at. And so it seemed a good a good fit. I really enjoyed my time in Washington. I basically lived on Capitol Hill for 3.5 months. And every day I was provided access to some of the, the most iconic collections in archaeology. Ones we read about is first years in our books. I was given a key to a huge storage, and I was allowed work away. And I could drop in at any stage along the corridor in the Smithsonian and talk to people, some of which had literally written the books on aspects of my discipline and things I wanted to learn. Um, I suppose outside of the research, Washington is an extremely interesting place to live. You kind of forget how much, how culturally important American sport, television, and film is until you're there. I'm a big NBA fan, so I got to go watch a Chicago Bulls game there. It was one of my goals to go see. If you're a fan of horror, the Exorcist house is up in Georgetown, and loads of things to see. So it was really enriching experience beyond the Smithsonian, which I could have happily stayed in all of every minute of the day there, I guess. Um, how it affected my career, reflecting on the Creative Ireland Fellowship and my career has been interesting to think about, especially 6 years out now. But even now, it still plays a really crucial part in my work and life, I think. In the immediate aftermath, I think it gave me a bit of a boost as an early career researcher. Maybe injected a bit of confidence into research abilities. I was only second year at the time, and so I still probably wasn't really too sure what I was doing. I don't know if I still am, but it kind of gave me that little shunt to keep going, and it most likely had a positive effect on me actually completing the program. The project itself, the impact was probably minor. It was kind of small, and the shutdowns kind of scuppered it a bit. But it really what has had the most effect is what the other creators have touched on is the connections that you make through Fulbright and the networks I've managed to maintain at the Smithsonian and in DC personally and professionally. I'm still in contact with Logan. I make sure every couple of months to send him a message, and I'm hoping in the near future to head back over there. During my time there, we discovered an Irish collection of stone axes that hadn't been looked at since 1916 roughly. So I was able to bring something to them as well. But the collaborations are the best. And one example, I think if you had a picture up there of Gene out me in front of the Henry the Elephant in Smithsonian, but Gene's a former Fulbright ambassador and a lecturer in the Kenny Business School. And we were maybe an example of one of those things where you say you shouldn't say no to. I was asked to show Jean around the museum. I said I'd show her around. I didn't really know what we would talk about. We didn't, looking at our profiles, we were very different. But we managed to find common ground between the business school in UL and archaeology. And we've co-written a couple of RTE brainstorms, and we're currently applying for a couple of grants for projects and stuff. So really good. You never know who you'll meet, basically. But there's been a couple of other opportunities then in the past 6 years, and just a couple of highlights is over the last 12 months, through casual meetings with people in the Smithsonian. I was invited out this year to the Max Planck Institute to give a talk at a workshop. And last summer, I ticked off one of my top 5 life things to do bucket list, where I was invited out on an expedition to Mongolia with the German Archaeological Institute. So you kind of don't know who you're going to meet yet, and you'll never know, I guess. Regards application tips, I think the first 2 speakers have done a better job than I suppose what I just apply is the most obvious one. But part of me, I remember being at one of these seminars, and most of you are going to be at different stages of your application. I would 100% agree with all of the recommendations about starting early, being very prepared. I had little notes about that too, but that wasn't me. I was one of the last minute ones. I almost talked myself out of applying for it. So maybe I'm talking to people like me out there. If you think you're far behind and you're not going to get in, just keep going with it, and you won't regret it.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, David. And I want to say a huge thank you to all of our speakers today, to Elva McCrone, Kevin McDermott, and of course David Stone. We're really, really grateful. you've given us such a variety of your Fulbright experiences and tips and application tips, etc. So we're just short on time. If anyone has any further questions, please email awards@fulbright.ie. Huge thanks again to our speakers. Do keep an eye out for the Creative Ireland webinar later in September on fulbright.ie/events. Do join our Completing Your Application Q&A webinar on the 7th of October at fulbright.ie/events. The application deadline is 23rd of October at 4 o'clock. We wish you the best of luck with your applications, and we do encourage you to apply. Thank you so much for joining us today, and yeah, very best of luck in your application. Bye, everyone.